most of the WrestleManias you're involved in, you've got a top-level match. So, you do WrestleMania 26 with Edge, you guys have the world title match. But I want to ask you about WrestleMania 28 with CM Punk, because the year building up to it, obviously they'd said it's going to be Rock and Cena in the main event. That was guaranteed, there was no changing it. And Punk's always said that he was really frustrated that no matter what he did, he was never going to get the main event match. But they did bring you back and gave him this big world title match. What was the experience like for you coming back? You'd been away for a while and been put in this position with Punk, who's maybe not thrilled that he won't get to main event.
Yeah, well, he always had a problem with that. And I even said to him, like, dude, like, once again, I was in the main event, but you had a match with Undertaker. I mean, that's a main event on any WrestleMania, And he goes, you were on last. You can't tell me any differently. You don't know how I feel. You were in the main event. I was like, okay. So he was always had that in his head. I don't think it was as bad as it was at this point when we worked. Because the reason why I thought of Punk was we had worked quite a bit over the years. We got along really well. We always had great matches. And I was the best in the world. And I left for a year or so, and he was the best in the world. So I said, well, this is great. We can do a best in the world versus best in the world match, right? So that's kind of what the idea was. And the original plan for the opening angle to get that rolling was I was going to tattoo CM Punk. What do you mean? I was going to do an angle where I knocked him out and handcuffed him to the ring ropes, take out a tattoo needle, and tattoo my initials onto his body. I would get a tattoo artist to show me how to do it and do like a CJ, okay? And I remember pitching that to Vince, and he was like, well, who cares? He's got so many tattoos. What difference does it make? I said, the difference is I'm tattooing him. And he's like, well, so what? It's for a tattoo guy to get tattooed unwantedly. It doesn't matter if you have one tattoo or 1,000. It's something that you'll always have to look at it and always think of it. It's very embarrassing and very violating, right? And so finally Vince went for it. And so we had it all planned and we were going to do it. And I think that we even had a tattoo artist there who was going to show me early in the day. And Vince then came to us and said, we're not doing the tattoo thing. It's like, why? Because tattoos bleed too much. Now, you guys have tattoos. They don't really bleed that much, and especially a smaller one. It might bleed a little bit where the blood wells up, but it's not like you're, gigging and there's buckets of blood flowing out of this tattoo. So once again, I think somebody got in Vince's head that didn't like the tattoo idea and just decided that, it's too much blood. We're going to get thrown off the air. So then Vince just came and said, well, we're going to do this thing that I understand Punk's dad is an alcoholic. Let's do an angle on that. And you can bury his family and, bury his dad for being an alcoholic. And I was like, have you talked to Punk about this? And asked him. He goes, no. He did talk to Punk, and Punk went for it. And that was kind of the angle of the thing. I was trying to get him to, to waver from his straight edge ways and sending liquor baskets to his dressing room. And then one day he drank it, and I was like, I gotcha. And I had a sheriff to give him a sobriety test where I just watched it back where I don't know if you guys have ever been pulled over, if they even do that here. One of the things they ask you to do if you're suspected of drunk driving is say the alphabet backwards. I can't say the alphabet backwards if I'm stone cold sober. I can barely say the alphabet forwards. I still get G and H mixed up. So Punk did it. He went over it and did it backwards. And there's a really kind of a pretty cool angle when you consider where it stemmed from. So then we get to the match. And Punk and I had this idea where we would have this modern day Savage and Steamboat classic with two guys with similar styles and a good story. And we told Vince that, and Vince said, no, I see it as a 2-minute DQ. And we were both like, a 2-minute DQ? I remember we were told that by the writers. And so we had to go have a meeting with him. He's like, you have been burying his dad, burying his family, calling him an alcoholic, trying to get him drunk, trying to do all these dastardly things. If he goes in there and has a 25-minute wrestling match with you, that makes him look awful. And he did kind of have a point. If we would have known that, maybe we wouldn't have done the angle the way we did it. But then that's when we came up with the idea, okay, well, if Punk gets disqualified, then he loses the title. So at least there's a reason where he can beat the shit out of me, but he can't go too far because then he loses the title anyway. So that was kind of the story of the match. And once again, the match I think was pretty good. But to me, once again, was there something missing from it? I don't know. I don't really know if it really was as good as we wanted it to be. Or maybe it was because, once again, I didn't watch it back. Because I remember thinking afterwards, here's another thing too, and it gets to me sometimes. When you wrestle in a stadium, the sound goes up. Whereas if you wrestle in an arena, or like if you go to an indie show here, it's super loud because the sound bounces off the walls and the ceiling. Stuff that you don't think of as a fan. But when you're in a stadium, the reactions are delayed. So you'll do something and be thinking like, why is there no one cheering? And then you watch it back and it just sounds super loud. But in the ring, it's very frustrating because you're not getting that reaction. You're not feeling the energy that you wish you could have. I remember the Edge match that I had was the same because the buildings are so big. So that does affect your performance to an extent because you kind of psych yourself out. Like, nobody cares. Why is nobody cheering? Does this suck? And they are, but it's just not coming to hit you in the ring like it would if it was in an arena. So I like the Punk match. I like the angle. I think we did a great job with it. I just don't know if it was as good as I wanted it to be or as I remember it, or maybe it's better than I remember it being.